Hi, good morning, and welcome to the Maryland State Data Center's annual training conference. My name is Alfred Sundara. I'm the manager of the Maryland State Data Center at the Maryland Department of Planning. Now, this is our yearly conference which we host for the affiliates of the data center. We hope that this training conference will help you learn a couple of things by the time we are done. And thank you for participating today. Just a couple of items I would like to note. We are recording this webinar and we will email all the attendees a link of the recording and the presentation slides when it is posted on our website, hopefully in the next few days. Before we begin, I want to go over a couple of features of the GoToWebinar tool, which we are using right now. If you have a question for any of the speakers that are going to present today, you do not have to wait till the end. You can submit your question anytime using the questions tool in the control panel located on the right side of your screen. We will also have a question and answer session following each presentation. We are also going to take a few polls throughout this webinar. And the polls are pretty interactive. All you have to do is click on the answer that has an option for the question and click submit. So we will get started with the first presentation. I'm going to talk about the Maryland State Data Center and our efforts towards the 2020 census. So this is our first poll question. We are basically trying to get an understanding of the mix of the people who are here in the event. What type of organization do you work for? I'll wait for a few seconds till everybody responds, and then we will have the answers to the poll shortly.
So the answers to our poll have come through. We have 52% with state government. We have 26% with county government, 10% other, and then a tie for 6% with MPO and public library system.
Right. Thank you, John. It's a good mix of people. Like we have nearly half of the attendees, or more than half of the attendees, are involved with the state government. Here is the agenda for today's webinar. Like I mentioned, I'm going to go over the status of the 2020 census and the self-response rates, and followed by Louis Kiskowski, who's going to present on COVID-19 and its impacts on planning. Then Jesse Ash is going to present on COVID-19 and measuring the impact of economic activity, followed by Krishna Akundi, who's going to go over historical census data that's available online. And he's also going to present on the census micro data analysis tool. And finally, I will go over accessing ACS data using APIs from the census website. So we have a lot of items that we would like to go over, and we would like to try to wrap this up before our 12:15 end time. So we should be moving along pretty quickly here. So we'll have another couple of poll questions. This is poll question 2. What was Maryland's 2010 census self-response rate? I'd like to see how many people are closer to the right answer here.
I'm going to just break in here. Al may have forgotten to remind people, if for some reason you're having an issue being able to click on the poll. That's because you're in full screen mode. Just exit full screen mode from the webinar, and then you'll be able to click them. You can then return to full screen, but the polls won't work in full screen mode. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
We've got our results here, Al. We have a tie for at 34%. 34% both said 76% and 66.5%. We had 31% say 69.5%, and nobody went for 83%.
So the right answer is 69.5%. It's close, like 1/3 of the people almost got it right. So like for 2010 census, we were a little under 70% for self-response rate. So let's go to the next poll question. This is basically, what do you think is Maryland's 2020 self-response rate so far?
And again, if anyone is having trouble clicking on the results, you'll need to exit from the webinar full screen mode, and then you'll be able to click them. We're getting a lot of responses here, Al. They're coming in. We'll give it a few more seconds, and then we'll bring up the results.
Sounds good.
Yeah, got a lot of participation here today. So here's the results. 49% said 70.3. 29% said 65.5. 14% said 78.5. And 9% said 85%.
So the right answer is C, 70.3%. So far, we have surpassed the 2010 self-response rate. And again, like we have till the end of this month for people to respond to the census using their forms, the self-response forms. So we are pleased to announce actually that we have surpassed the 2010 self-response rate. That's basically due to all the hard work the state complete count committee has put in to make people fill out their forms. So with that said, we'll go on with my presentation. So for 2020 census, the Census Bureau has made the census forms available through 3 different ways. Through internet, where you can fill your form online, or you can call in using the phone lines, or by mail, which has been the way it has been done in the past, all the past censuses. But people have taken advantage of the option to submit the census form online. So majority of the people have been submitting their census through using internet. We will go over that in a couple of minutes. And a couple of other things I would like to note. The response rates are tracked daily by the Census Bureau, and these information, the response rates, is being posted on the census website for most of the geographies, starting with the states, the country, the state, counties, the cities, and also the census tracts. They have also made this information available on an interactive map. On the left side of the screen, you see a map of the United States with showing the outlines of the states. So that kind of shows you the response rates for each state, and you should be able to click on the state and it will give you more detailed information on the response rates. I'll try to bring it up on the website so it's a little easier to see where the response rates are or how it works. So that's the same website that I have a screenshot on my presentation. Like this is the national response rate, and by default it defaults to Alabama. But like if you click on Maryland here, it will show Maryland's response rate as of today. So I'm sorry, the data is usually updated every day at 3 o'clock. So it's still showing September 20th data, and the data lags by 1 day. So that's what it is going on right now. And you can click on the county to select the census response rate for a particular county you're looking for. Let me look for Maryland here. I've selected Maryland, and now it will give me an option to choose counties here using this drop-down menu. So that's Maryland self-response rate of 70.3, and then I can click on a county here. It should go to the Maryland's map, and these are, you can hover your mouse and it will show the response rates for each particular county. And similarly, you can select a city or a census tract within the county. To my presentation here. And on the right panel of the presentation slide here shows a Tableau dashboard showing the census response rate data for the geographies. Right here in this column, it shows the total enumerated information. The total enumerated is the self-response rates plus the non-response follow-up, where the Census Bureau's workers go to each person or individual or household that hasn't responded and get them to fill that form. So it's a combination of both of those. That's the total enumerated. And this top right panel here shows the self-response rates for each state. Maryland is in the top 10, and this is as of a couple of days back when I created this presentation at 70.2. And you should also be able to look at the county response rates right here in this panel right here, bottom middle panel. And also you have this option to look at the response rates for the incorporated places in Maryland in the bottom right corner. So that's that. And let me go to the website if I can. You should be able to access the Tableau website by clicking on the rankings here from the self-response rate website on the Census Bureau's website. I have links for all these dashboards towards the end of my presentation. I necessarily don't want to go over the Tableau dashboard again. I'm just trying to bring it up to show you what it looks like and how you can access that. And so we at the Department of Planning created an interactive dashboard that highlights or shows all the counties' response rates and breaking it down by the type of responses, whether it's internet response, phone response, or mail response, and also comparing those response rates against the 2010 self-response rate. That's this dashboard on the right side of the screen here. And, I'm sorry, the left side of the screen. And on the right side, we have posted the municipal response rates for all the municipalities or the incorporated places in Maryland, along with the 2010 self-response rate. So you can look at the 2020 response rates and compare it against the 2010 self-response rates. I'll quickly go over to our website to show you where we have this. So this is the dashboard that I was talking about. So if you hover your mouse on any of these counties, like I have Montgomery County highlighted here, and it shows the breakdown of mail and phone response rate, internet response rate, the 2010 self-response rate, which is at 80%, the 2020 self-response rate, which is at 77.2%. And it also has a green line on the dashboard, which shows Maryland's self-response rate as of yesterday. And finally, the national response rate, which is the red horizontal line going across. And this is that interactive municipal response rate information that's posted on the website as well. One neat thing about this is you can sort these municipalities by clicking on this name here by alphabetical order, and it's easy to find your municipality going by alphabetical order this way. And then you can also sort the response rates from highest to lowest for any of these posted values here. We have 2020 response rate. We also have the 2020 internet response rate and the 2010 self-response rate on the website here. So these are the web interactive dashboards that we created at the Department of Planning. You can access these dashboards from the Maryland Department of Planning's homepage, which is on the left side here of the screen. And right in the middle of the homepage, we have a image that would looks like the dashboard. And if you click on it, it will take you to the interactive dashboard. And similarly, we posted this information or the dashboard link on the Maryland Census website, maryland.census.gov website. It's right here on the front page, and also on the right corner, we have an image of the dashboard. You can click either of them and it will take you to the dashboard. So a couple of other things which we at the data center have been helping the state complete count committees and the county complete count committees are by providing weekly reports of the census tracts with the lowest response in each of the jurisdictions, like the 23 counties and the city of Baltimore. This is an example for Prince George's County. It identifies these 5 census tracts which have the lowest response rate among all the census tracts within the county. And we not only show the self-response rate at the top data line here, and we also identify the people that live in the census tract that haven't responded yet, and the households that have not responded yet. These items in the red are calculated based on the total population that live within the tract and using the self-response rate person to determine the people that haven't responded or the households that haven't responded so far. And we have also been creating graphs for some few jurisdictions to look at the municipal response rates within the county. This is a chart for Frederick County, which shows all the municipalities within Frederick County, and their 2020 response rate is shown in the red numbers here, and it's broken down by internet and phone and mail response rate. The blue bars are the internet response rates in Frederick County for 2020 census. The orange bar at the top here are the phone and mail response rates within that municipality. And we also have yellow bars right next to them. Those show the 2010 self-response rate for the same municipalities. As you can see, most of the municipalities have surpassed the 2010 response rates. Only a couple are kind of getting there, and they have almost like a week or 10 days to catch up to what they need to be in 2010. Or surpass the 2010 census response rates. So those are a few things we are doing at the data center to help the local complete count committees. And like I mentioned, here are the links to the census self-response rate dashboard. And the second link is the link to the Tabular dashboard, which has the interactive data. And these two links are the census response rate dashboards that we at the Department of Planning put together. And I have listed my contact information. If you have any specific questions that you haven't asked in the questions so far, you can reach out to me. And with that, I'll see if I can answer any questions that may have come up so far.
Hey, Al, this is John.
Yeah.
At this point, there are no questions. Oh, I'm getting feedback.
Okay.
At this point, there's no questions. We had one, I guess you could say, comment from Sean Kimberly saying, I would have expected it to be higher with the internet response available in 2020, referring to our response rate. But that is that's it for the questions.
Okay.
Just remember that you can send these questions anytime, and at the end of each presentation, we will moderate those questions, and then any questions that are left over at the end, we will have a full panel Q&A.
Okay, yeah. I mean, like people have this option of submitting through online, and I'm not sure, like some of these people might not have access to internet, but like Maryland, I believe, is number 4 in the nation in terms of internet self-response rates. So we have been doing a pretty good outreach about letting people know that they can use internet to submit their forms. But again, like for some people, it might still be hard for people who are not that familiar with internet, using the internet. And some people might be skeptical about submitting their information online. So, you know, there might be other things going on as well.
We got
So,
some more. We had some more come in at that moment, Al.
okay.
Andrew Gray asks, what has been the impact of the 2020 Census grant program? Can you speak to that?
I mean, like I can only address it in terms of the data perspective. What I can tell for a fact is like we have surpassed the 2010 self-response rates. So, what we did with the grant, I believe, has worked because like we are ahead of where we were back in 2010. So that's a good thing, I guess. So, and we pretty much, yeah.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, I think it's been a success according to the data perspective, and I'm not sure about the other side of things, but like as far as I can look at the results, it's been positive, I think.
Here's another question with a follow-up that you may have already kind of alluded to. Elizabeth Leo asks, it seems that Baltimore City has a low response rate with only Somerset being lower. What do you know about the response rates in the city and why they're low? Is it due to the lack of internet access in some households? And yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. There are a couple of things going on, I believe, with Baltimore City. It's usually like when you have a lot of group quarters or people living not in typical households, it's that particular information is not enumerated right away. That's being done separately through group quarters responses. So once that gets in, that response rate is going to catch up to where it has to be. But with typical households, self-response rate only captures households responses, and this might not have been captured because, like I mentioned, like there might be group quarters population that hasn't been captured. That's kind of driving the response rates low. And also, there might be instances where the Census Bureau sends a form where there might not have been a dwelling or people living there. Either it's vacant homes or a dwelling no longer exists there. So typically, Baltimore City might have a few more vacant homes compared to other jurisdictions, and that's probably one of the other reasons. As for Somerset County, it's basically the group quarters population that's basically driving the response rates down. And once that has been addressed, the total response rate will be higher.
Thank you. Okay. Andrew Gray asks, how is Maryland looking in terms of federal enumeration of households, considering the possibility of an early end to the extended version of that process? Is there anything you can speak to that, or?
I'm not sure if it would have a big negative impact, but again, like there was yesterday I was listening to a Census Bureau's conference. They said like there might be a possibility of extending this deadline, and if there is a possibility of extending the deadline, they are planning on doing a couple of other events that might help with group quarters enumeration. As far as household responses, we did better than what we did last time. So I think honestly, that's a good thing. And the shortened timeline didn't have a negative impact in terms of not getting all the responses we thought we would, at least from the data perspective.
Yeah, and Elizabeth Leo, this will be our last question, then we'll move on. Elizabeth Leo asks, as a follow-up, is there to her earlier question, is there a concern about the skewing of the results with most being internet, or is that just a function of 60% of Maryland households having access to high speed?
Yeah, that's true to an extent. It's also the ease of using the software, I guess. Like, yeah, I mean, like you don't have to go out and mail a form. It's the same thing. Like the data that's being submitted through online is being securely handled through various protocols the federal government has put in place. So it's just with the COVID and all the closure and everything, people thought it might be easier for them to submit their forms online, and utilizing the new capability they have implemented this census around. So. Yeah.
That's it for the question.
All right. Thank you, John. So we will move on to the next presentation here. Louis Kiskowski is going to present on COVID-19 and its impacts on planning. Thank you, everyone.
Good afternoon. Good morning, everybody. Just give me a chance to set up my screen. I have to change the view. My discussion today is going to be on the effects of COVID-19 on planning and practice.
Al, Louis, we can't see your screen. You're going to have to select the screen that it's being displayed on.
I'm trying to pick that right now. It seems to be a little bit different than it was. Monitor one. How are we doing? Can everybody see my screen now?
It's on.
Excellent. Good morning, everybody. So my discussion is going to be on how planning practices may have affected the COVID-19 pandemic, specifically our push towards recommending density, mixed use developments, and more closed quarters redevelopment, and a move away from suburban sprawl, which was more the direction that community planning had been moving beforehand. But before I really get into my presentation, we do have a series of poll questions to engage with the audience, and I'll begin with the first one of my series.
And it's launched. I just want to remind everybody, if you're having trouble clicking on it, please escape from full screen mode, and then you'll be able to click.
So in line with the topic, what is your current work situation? Has it been changed based on the pandemic?
We're getting a number of responses. How about you, Louis? How would you answer this question?
I have been working from home.
Okay.
And you, John?
I have been working from home. All right, we're going to display the poll and I'll read you the results. Okay, so 73% said working from home. 21% are a 50-50 split somewhere in the middle. 6% are commuting to work, and nobody did anything else. There's no other.
And these results are kind of expected and also very informative to us, understanding that a lot of our members are affiliated with various government agencies. Some might be essential workers who have to require to go in, but for the most part, as data workers, we might have the luxury of being able to accomplish a lot of our work at home. Thank you very much. And that moves on to the next question, which is also related.
So this question, which is now displayed to everybody, is when did your organization decide on work from home? Was it late February, early March? Was it April or May? Was it summer going into fall? Or did not or was not feasible?
I think we came early March.
Yes, we were early March.
Yeah. Times kind of changed a little bit during the quarantine.
And it looks like we got, you know, a good number of the people are weighing in. Some may still have trouble clicking on it, which means that they may be in full screen mode. So let's go. I'm going to close it and share it right now. So to the answers to when did your organization decide on working from home, 88% was, you know, the first section, late February, early March. 12% was April, May, and none were made the decision in summer, fall, or none were not feasible.
Wow, thank you very much again. And we'll move straight to the next poll question because it is also again related to the same relevant material.
And this question going out to everyone is, I find that working from home is either more productive, less productive, or there's no difference. What about you, Louis?
This is the toughest one to answer. I feel like sometimes I'm more productive, but you know, like the task setting is like, well, what if I'm not doing the being more productive on the less essential tasks. I guess having the regular meetings to coordinate. We still do a lot of that day to day, so I'd say it's about the same.
Yeah, I'd say for me, probably more productive. Some days it's no difference, but most days it's more productive. All right, we got a lot of people coming in on this one, and we got a nice little spread of how people are being affected. All right, that's about it. I'm going to go ahead and share it, and I'll read you off the results here, Louis. 53% said they're more productive. 34% said there's really no difference, and a minority, 13%, said less productive.
And especially when you compare it to more productive or no different.
Yeah.
It's the vast majority. So excellent. Great job out there, everybody, getting your work done. And if it's hard for you, I'm sorry too. I'm actually sometimes much less productive, but I didn't really want to seem so negative at the beginning of the poll question. But I think it's all balances out to about the same. But being on my own at home, it seems sometimes difficult to focus on the task. Okay, thank you very much. And this next poll question, I believe, is just for me in relation to this talk. So let's see what everybody thinks and how good we're going to get.
So here is another poll question. Would you expect that COVID infection rates increased or decreased based on population density and connectivity? Would you expect that COVID infection rates increased or decreased based on population density and connectivity? Do you want to say anything more about your reasoning behind this question?
Okay, so the idea is we've been planning for density to refill and infill mixed use condensed development for the last recent paradigm of planning practice. And obviously a pandemic infection has some relation to people interacting with each other. So the hypothesis behind this has been that more urban and denser places would be. So we'd like to see if your guys agree with the author's hypothesis that it would be.
And who's the author?
Oh, that's going to be on the next slide. It's a group of 3 authors working with a bunch of other researchers. I'm going to have to give them all due credit.
Here we go. Here are your responses. 85% predicted that it increased, 9% that it decreased, and 6% that there was no change.
No change. And that was the expectation of the authors, or at least the expectation of the authors as far as the data was going to be concerned at face value. In addition, they also thought that mortality rates would be as a function of infection rates, especially because maybe the overcrowding of the healthcare system, et cetera. But let's go ahead and discuss their actual study, since I didn't do it. I'm just really discussing their own data. So the name of the article is "Does Density Aggravate the COVID-19 Pandemic? Early Findings and Lessons for Planners." And I really would like to emphasize the fact that these authors put themselves out on a limb to use data that has not been completely vetted from 50 different states, all using different reporting methods. It is the same data set that is driving the Johns Hopkins University dashboard that has been advertised online very often. So these 3 researchers, 2 from the University of Utah, 1 from Johns Hopkins, took that data and broke it down at the county level. They created new variables for density based on metropolitan or rural counties, eliminating a lot of ones that showed both aspects. They went out of their way to create a data set that was going to be able to understand how this infection was spreading in communities on the ground based on what we know so far. And their key findings was that there was a slight increase in the infection rate, but it was not statistically significant. But there was a statistically significant reduction in the mortality rate of COVID-19 in what they called more dense communities. All of these sorts of claims sort of need to be discussed in lieu of the variables that they ended up using to define their terms, which was very robust and difficult, but I'm going to do my best to discuss it in the time that we have here. If anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box as we're going. The moderator will certainly let me know. So the first variable that they discussed is density. What is density? People living closer together in their community, whatever sort of settlement it is. But they saw a lot of difficulties in the idea of density as far as this pandemic was concerned. And they related an idea of connectivity to density, which very strong overlap, but what is it? Well, they first took the number of jobs within a 45-minute travel time, positing that people moving from place to place is what is transferring the vector for the virus, not people just being dense, living close together, more about what kind of connections they have. Another thing that would create more regional connections to create passages for viral contagion would be the enplanement rate, which is the number of people entering and exiting airplane flights on the regular within a certain distance from a place. And of course, the outcome variables are, well, how many people are getting sick? That's the infection rate. And how many deaths are there for 10,000 people, the death rate. So as far as that's concerned, things look relatively simple. But then we're going to start getting to more confounding variables in the future, such as, well, the connectivity areas where you're going to have a more likely spread of a virus are also going to be more likely to have medical facilities, hospitals, testing facilities. People might be more socially pressured to conform with social distancing, working from home, masks, because these places have people living close together. It's kind of like a direct confrontation with the possible ways of spreading. They use the ACS to discuss variables as far as race, ethnicity, income, and education, because all of these things had correlation to both death rates and infection rates, depending on the setting in which they were found. And then they also used the positive test for confirmed in each county. They had to do some measurements for areas where there wasn't county that had infections but no deaths. They couldn't use 100%, so they did normalize the data a lot. There was an enormous technical appendix to this paper, which describes in detail all of the methodologies and specific softwares they use to run their data analyses. This is the general flow chart that they published with the paper, breaking down both the virus rate, the infection rate, and the death rate, and the variables that went into that. So for instance, the death rate, the percentage of smokers and people 60 plus, 60 older than 60, strongly correlated to the number of people that died. Also the ICU bed rate, because of the fact that there were less available beds for people to occupy. It's an African American, etc. And then of course we have the employment rate here, the testing rate, all going to the virus rates and the death rate. So I'm really sorry that I wasn't able to directly describe that somebody in a rural area or a denser populated area would be X% more likely to be infected or die, but that wasn't really the thrust of the study. It was to study like really complicated correlations between the data that would say whether or not it is good to have more connected places or less connected places, denser population planning or less dense planning in regards to this pandemic. And as far as it was concerned, the recommendations are not to change planning procedures whatsoever. That based on all the confounding variables, it was very difficult to create a correlation based on just density or just planning or community types as a whole. That does conclude my presentation. I don't know if there are any questions or comments came through during my talk.
Well, here's two comments. The one is, and I responded that we might be able to do this later if I get you the data. It was Nancy McCrae asked, can you cross-tab the responses to the polls by the type of organization represented? Now, I can get you that data later. Would you be able to do that?
Yes, so we can see where the people that responded were from and what their responses were. I could get that data. I could break that down.
Great. I got a comment from Q Xiao. In some nations, the density is higher than the US, but the number of pandemic cases and rates are much lower than those in the US. I don't know if that really, it's just a comment. I don't know if there's anything you need to say to that.
That's the authors do go out of their way to say that this data could only be applied currently for US counties, and that to take it to other countries, we do have to discuss different ideas of connectivity, public transportation, less reliance on automobiles. There are so many commonalities between the American counties that were able to compare that they said that they could not directly do that with other countries at this time.
So I would say that more data will be coming in. This is an early study. I mean, I would think that this is going to be continued to be studied in regards to, planning.
Absolutely. And of course, the public health people are still on the front lines of this. And we're really much in the middle of something. And they're trying to get an idea of, well, does this have any implications that we can tell of right now? And really not. And if there's anything, it's that, well, planning for the communities that we have now has been adequate and has not furthered any danger in pandemics that we can see at this time.
Okay, that is the end of the questions. I'm going to go off and you can introduce our next speaker.
Thank you so much, John. The next speaker is going to be Jesse Ash from our department. He's going to be discussing some of the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic in Maryland and the surrounding region.
Good morning, everyone. Now, everyone want to take a deep breath and enjoy the first day of autumn before we start to talk about measuring the impact on economic activity that COVID has done to the state, identifying some demographic resources and preliminary impacts to the state. In order to combat the pandemic, well, first we'll go to the poll question.
Jesse, breaking in here. You need to share your screen. We can't see anything.
I thought I was sharing.
Nope,
my
all we see is you.
Oh, okay. Well,
Now go to
dress.
change the screen. Change the screen because we're seeing your presenter mode. We want to see the full screen. Remember the drop down. Go to screen 2 or screen 1, whichever is. It's in sharing. And then under where it says share screen, the screen is a drop down that you can select a different screen.
I see stop sharing my webcam.
No, not webcam, under sharing. It's a blue strip that has a little arrow in front of it. There's a stack of different things. Is your orange arrow pointing to the right or pointing to the left?
Pointing to the right.
Okay, so you're able to see all of the things to the right of that, right? Sharing, webcam, audio.
Yes.
Okay, click on sharing. See where it says show screen?
No, I do not.
Do you see show screen? Do you see stop sharing? Give mouse and keyboard control. Do you see those?
I see stop sharing my webcam.
No, you're not in webcam. I want you to go to sharing. The word is sharing.
I see sharing.
Okay, and when you expand that, does it say show screen?
Show screen.
In the drop down, select a different screen. Oh, you stop. You got to. You just go to the little drop down. Now there's a little drop down that says show screen. The word screen is a drop down menu.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, you stopped. Come on.
Show screen.
Because we don't want to have to see your notes. There we go. Okay, I'm off, and we will run the first poll. Thank you, Jesse. So the first poll question is, the Maryland Department of Labor reported 2,090 unemployment claims for the week of March 7th, 2020. How many claims were made for the week ending April 4th, 2020? Starting to get some answers here, Jesse.
Good. What does it look like?
Well, it looks like we got 4% have voted. So we're going to get probably some more people coming in. Again, I just want to remind people, if you're having difficulty clicking on a response, you may have to exit the full screen mode, because polling doesn't work in the GoToWebinar full screen. Then you can always just remove that. You can just come back. So we're getting, oh yeah, they're starting to flow in now, Jesse. All right, let's go ahead and share this. I'll read off the responses to you. So Jesse, 53% stated that it was 108,508. 22% said 42,334. 19% came up with 61,770, and 6% said 3,040.
Well, according to the Maryland Department of Labor, for that first week ending on a Monday, there were 108,508 claims for unemployment insurance made. Okay, now we've all seen what the impact, or felt the impact of what government has done to try to slow the spread of the disease. Many of the government exercised emergency powers and ordered a shutdown, and this has led to an outcome of a sharp rise in unemployment, stress on supply chains, and a decrease in government income, and a collapse of the travel and tourism industry. But first, let's talk about the timeline. The governor declared a state of emergency on March 5th of 2020 after the Secretary of Health had declared a public health emergency. This enabled state government to activate emergency powers to protect the health and safety of Marylanders, and they included temporary stay-at-home orders, and they specified business closures. This prompted the Maryland Emergency Management Agency to escalate their state response activation level to enhance, calling in specific agencies to work on the event. One of the first things that the State Emergency Operations Center did was to create a series of task forces to deal with the response. And at first they created 4 task forces. There was a feeding cell task force. There was a hospital surge activation task force. There was a testing task force. And then there was a task force set up exclusively to deal with the poultry industry. The mission of the hospital surge task force the purpose of that was to identify surge capability and add surge capacity to the state. And This also created construction teams that were doing site assessments, and they constructed tents. Testing task force, they needed to design test sites to increase access to the COVID testing. And this included opening and preparing the vehicle emissions inspection places and prepping them, preparing them for testing COVID. They also opened other sites, Timonium Fairgrounds, Purdue Stadium on the Eastern Shore, Pimlico. And another task force was the Feeding Cell Task Force, and that the mission of the Feeding Cell Task Force was to support and feed the vulnerable populations during the event. And among the issues that the feeding cell had to deal with was that the Maryland Department of Aging reported that there was a 258% increase in the need for senior feeding. And as a result of the emergency regulations, food banks were reporting supply chain issues. The donations were down, and the funding opportunities were limited due to social distancing. So the setup for the State Emergency Operations Center was that the Department of Human Services would be the lead agency for the feeding cell. The Department of Health would be the lead agency for the hospital surge activation task force and for the testing site task force. And then the upholstery task force was, there was a joint leadership between the Department of Agriculture and the Maryland Emergency Management Agency. And then, of course, the Department of Planning was supporting all of the agencies, but particularly the Department of Human Services requested our help in collecting and analyzing information on the labor market in the state. So if there are any questions about the timeline, you can just enter those into the chat box. And now I just want to touch on a couple of the demographic and economic resources that we've used so far to try to get a measure of the impact that COVID-19 has had on Maryland residents and the employment situation. So among those data sources, we looked at current employment statistics. Those were available from Maryland Department of Labor and the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. And we also identified a new source. It was actually produced by the U.S. Census Bureau. They created a COVID-19 impact hub. And there are several data products that are available from that dashboard. And I'll talk about spend a little bit of time talking about the COVID-19 impact planning report and the weekly household pulse survey. The data available from the Department of Labor included the initial claims for unemployment. Those are tabulated on a weekly basis. And now, as a result of demand, they are also available by industry, by occupation, and by specific programs. This chart shows the initial claims by unemployment insurance program and by county. The different programs include extended benefits, include a total for extended benefits. Those began to be issued in late June of this year. And then the two particular unemployment programs that came out of the CARES Act, or the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation Program, and the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. And then there's also data available for regular unemployment insurance. Now, with this dashboard, you can also select on an attribute for the county to get more details. So by selecting a bar, you can get the specific program data that are available for each jurisdiction. The unemployment claims are also available by industry, and that's for the state geographies, the state political subdivisions. And you can get claims, unemployment claims also by occupation, as well as for each of the individual unemployment insurance programs. Dashboard enables you to look at zip code level information, and you can actually make copies of the maps from this product. You can zero in on a zip code to identify the location, the zip code, and the total number of claims that came out of that zip code. And this is what the spreadsheet for the weekly unemployment claims data looks like. What we do is we tabulate this for the Department of Human Services, and we've been maintaining a running tab of this for ever since March. So we've got a spreadsheet, and we have also identified spark lines that show the highs and the lows for when claims are made. We've added regional totals. We've also got a state tabulation that deducts the non-Maryland residents and the residents that have applied for a claim and did not provide an address. And this chart displays a combination of the data sets, the monthly total non-farm employment and the weekly unemployment claims. So you can see the initial spike that occurred right after the emergency powers, the emergency legislation, the emergency power orders for emergency powers was issued. There was a spike at the near the end of May when they also added the two programs from the CARES Act, and there was another brief spike around July 4th when the Department of Labor extended the benefits of for unemployment claims. A second source of information I was referring to is available from the hub at the Census Bureau's website. And the data are presented in interactive maps and downloadable resources, so data users can download the data that produces the dashboard and use it into their own research and create their own data products. Now, this is it's not an app, and it doesn't have to be downloaded. It's a website, and it's optimized to be used with a web browser or a desktop, but you can also use it on mobile devices and tablets. One of the products from the hub is the impact planning report. And this is a combination of data from the American Community Survey, the ACS, 5-year estimates for the ACS, and county business patterns. Currently what's available at the hub is our data from the 2017 county business patterns, but that'll be updated because the 2018 CBP is available now. This is the second page of the report, and just like with the other dashboards, you can select an attribute and get more details. So by selecting an attribute, the attribute for supplemental assistance, you can identify the percentage of households that receive SNAP. This is just for an example. Now, these are data from the county business patterns for the United States and Maryland. It's the 2018 data. And just looking at the various industries, you can see that for the most part, the distribution of employment in industries is comparable for Maryland and the United States, with maybe two notable exceptions. One would be manufacturing, where the percentage of manufacturing nationally is more than twice that for Maryland. And then the other industry to take a look at would be professional, scientific, and technical services, where Maryland's 12% is about 70% higher than the national level at 7%. This is employment by industry in Maryland, again, for this is from the 2018 County Business Patterns Report. And you can see that the largest employers are in healthcare and social services, professional and technical services, and in retail trade. Now, from March to April, there were almost 360,000 people unemployed, and that's a lot of people. Only 5 jurisdictions in the state have a population greater than that. The largest losses were in food service, healthcare, and retail trade, and the highest percent losses were in arts, entertainment, and recreation. 61% there, 45% in food service. And employment just really took a loss. Through the first quarter, Maryland averaged about 108,000 people unemployed. From January through March, the unemployment was about 3%. The next 3 months, for the second quarter of Maryland, for Maryland, the unemployment, it tripled. It was by over 171%, and it averaged for those months, it averaged over 300,000 people. Unemployment reached as high as 10% in April. And so just for the first 2 quarters, there was a 142% increase in the number of unemployed persons. Now this chart shows that there looks to be a rebound in employment when you look at the June unemployment, when you compare that with the April unemployment. And this chart just displays the 10 largest industries in the state in terms of employment. And now this is the weekly household pulse survey. This is a brand new product. It's an interagency collaboration with the Census Bureau, the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, Department of Agriculture, And it takes a look at the spending habits, the employment status, food security, housing, physical and mental health, access to health care. It's just a wide range of characteristics that are cross-tabulated by the attributes that these agencies produced. When you look at the loss of household income, you can see that since March 13th, about 50% of all of the households in the country and the state experienced a loss of household income. But the Pulse survey also asks about expectations. So you can see that about a third of the households also expect a loss in income over the next 4 weeks. This chart displays the educational attainment for adults not working. So it shows that for Maryland, the number of persons with a bachelor's degree is substantially higher than, and with a bachelor's degree not working, is substantially higher than it is for the state as a whole. And now, I tend to think that this is because of the predominance of the scientific and professional services industries, where you may recall that Maryland is about 12% of the employment for the state of Maryland is in that industry. When it's compared nationally, it's about 7%. This chart is another product from the weekly Pulse survey, the Household Pulse survey, and shows the reasons for not working. And when you can see that most people not working, it's due to retirement for both the United States and for the state of Maryland. But on the left-hand side of the retired classification, about 16% of the people are not working because they are dealing with the coronavirus individually within the household. And then on the right-hand side of the retirement classification, you can see in those classifications, those are showing that about 27% for the state and 29% for the country. These people are not working because of the impact the disease has had on their employment as opposed to their household. So that's just a brief look at the incident timeline, a couple of the demographic resources that we've been using, and I cherry-picked a couple of the preliminary impacts that COVID has left us with so far. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to contact me.
Hey, Jesse, we have a question.
Okay.
This is from Quizal. Why does healthcare have the highest net loss during the pandemic?
That's a good question. It's not just healthcare though. That's the broad NAICS category. So it's healthcare and social services, social assistance services. And I would think that a lot of the places where those services would be rendered had been shut down temporarily. But again, I don't know, and that would just be my best guess.
So in other words, it's not the front line. I guess that's the reason for the question.
Yeah, no, this wouldn't be the first responders. These would be other people that are in the industry. So I mean, there's the difference between occupation and industry.
So there's
So
also is there a NAICS breakdown that people can find that breaks it down further?
it would break it down by industry.
Okay, gotcha. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on. You can introduce your next panelist there, Jesse.
Yeah, well, our next panelist is Gita Krishna Akunde, and he will be discussing how to collect historical information from the census.
John, can you hear me?
Everyone can hear you.
Oh, thank you. Well, we're going to start talking about finding historical data online. But first, I want to say, wow. Those first three presentations were very data heavy and a lot of information, and it's just amazing. I do want to show my thanks to the audience for participating in our poll questions, and I say this from the entire SDC staff. But before we get into finding historical census data online, a poll question.
Question is now visible to everybody, and they can vote. If they're in full screen mode, they won't be able to. They can just exit. The question is, how often do you use the State Data Center website as a resource? Once a week? Once a month? Rarely or never? Starting to get some votes coming in there. How often do you use it as a resource, Krishna?
I use it every day. I have no choice. But
Okay.
even though it's not my, even if it weren't part of my job, I still would use it. It's a great resource to learn about the state and the counties and what's happening in terms of, for example, we heard 3 presentations today. What's happening with the census, especially now, Census 2020. You can see what's happening. So the website is a great resource for that. And a lot of the stuff that Jesse talked about, getting background data. So it's a great resource, and I do use it, and I encourage people who have not been using it to use it more often.
Let's take a look at the results. All right, to the question, how often do you use the State Data Center website as a resource? 46% said once a month, 44% said rarely, and then we had a tie at 5% for once a week and never.
Ooh, that hurts. But it is a great resource. You should visit the site. And let me get into my presentation about finding historical census data online. So, this is something all of us come across. We may need to refer to historic data in response to a data request in preparing a report, a grant application, or reviewing the document. In the next few minutes, I'll walk through some of the sites we've come across to find historical census data. Now, for us here at Planning, our first stop is the State Data Center website. And if you look at the blue bar above, the navigation bar, the main tabs we would focus on for census data is the ACS, the census estimates, and census data, the 10-year counts. So let's take a look, and let's just go live here and take a look at the website. we are. Let's try it again. I'm going to right. So this is our home page, and we're going to look at the ACS. So having some technical difficulties here as usual. So we actually have the ACS one-year data, which goes back to 2003. I know you see the 2002, but as you know, 2002, Maryland was a test site for the ACS data set. And so 2002 is just a test site. The latest data.
Krista, I gotta break it. I'm going to, everyone's console is locked on Jesse's last slide, so I'm gonna have to take it back and give it back. So just to hang out.
All right.
All right, let's see if that refreshed.
Okay. So if you can see my screen, we are on the State Data Center website's American Community Survey page. And I'm scrolling down to talk about the ACS 1 year. The latest data is 2019 ACS, and we should have that up on our site later this week. We also have the ACS 3 year. The 3-year data set, the oldest is from 2000 to 2007, 2005 to 2007. And the last year, the last 3-year period for which the ACS 3-year data series is available is the 2011 to 2013. As you know, in 2013, it was discontinued. We also have the ACS 5-year. The oldest data set is the 2005-2009, and the most recent, the 2014-2018. So this is primarily the ACS gives us a lot of recent data, with the exception of going back 10 years. We can also look at the census estimates for population and housing. The most recent data is the 2019 estimates. We also have estimates going back to, from 2000 to 2010 annually, and also available is the 1990 to 1999. As many of you are aware, the ACS is a survey. It's a rolling survey, whereas the census estimates are based on administrative data largely. Now we want to look at census data, the 10-year counts. We scroll down here. I do want to take your attention to the left-hand menu. We have Census 2010, Census 2000, and the historical census. So if we click on historical census, we have a couple of reports at the top. Population by age and sex for Maryland's jurisdictions for the 3 decades 1970 to 2000. We also have another report, population of Maryland's regions and jurisdictions. This is just a population count from 1790 to 2010. We also have general demographic profiles going back to 1980 and 1990. So what if I need data, when I'm doing my research, I need data going back further to the 1970s or to the 1900s. what I tend to do is I prefer to go to the decennial census publications. And so the decennial publications are a great resource. There are certain limitations. Let's go to the actual site. Hand-to-eye coordination is something I lack. All right, nope, did it again. All right, here we are. So these are the decennial census official publications. These are PDF documents, which means that obviously you cannot download individual tables. The other limitation of the PDF documents is that in most cases, you're limited to either nation, state, county, or place. As you can see, the data, the latest decennial census is 2010. The oldest is 1790. So you can download the PDF documents. And usually what I do is when I have a simple question, doesn't require a lot of work, I do refer to the documents themselves. These documents are available in the Census library. So you have to go to the Census website and go to the main library. I'll just show you how we get there. If you click on Library Main, clicks away there. There we are. So this is the main library page. You want to scroll down to Publications. Publications by series. And then Census of Population and Housing. Now, another source that I have not used personally, but that is what am I doing here? There we are the census records from the National Archives. The National Archives, while with the census publications and what we have on the State Data Center website, the data we show are basically summary data. But the National Archives provides individual records, The latest data that they have available online is the 1940 census. Again, these are simply scans of documents that they have. Primarily, if you want to do a lot of research, genealogical research, or look at actual census records from the archives, you have to go to the archives. But what they do have online is the 1940 census. They have partners such as Ancestry.com and FamilySearch.org, which have census records going back further to the 1850s and 1840s. The census, the archives is limited to publishing census data because it can only release data after 75, I believe it's 72 or 75 years. So 1940 is the one that's currently available. Again, you can use Ancestry.com, which is a subscription service, or FamilySearch.org, which is a free service, to search for other census records, individual records. Another good source, if you want to know what documents, what records have been transcribed, you might visit a site called US Gen Web. Just like it sounds, US GEN Web. You can Google it. It basically lists what has been transcribed by either the National Archives or its partners. Another source, which I have not used before, is the IPMS USA. It's a project started at the University of Minnesota. IPMS consists of sample data from the federal censuses 1850 to 2010 and ACS data from 2000 to the present. It has also partnered with Ancestry.com to provide household records from 1790 to 1850. The IPMS records are available in ASCII format. So in order to download this data, you have to register. Registration is free. One of the things that I found is that registration is easier for researchers at universities and libraries. If you are not any of those two organizations, you can certainly email IPMS to get access. But it is a great resource. Like I said, I've never used it. For those of you in the audience who have used this site, we would appreciate hearing from you about your impressions. The last site that I do want to talk about is another IPMS project called NHGIS, the National Historical Geographic Information System. I have used this site quite often. I find it very useful. Actually, not just I, but our team at the SDC has found it very useful. The great thing about NHGIS is that it provides easy access to summary tables and time series of population, housing, agriculture, and economic data, along with GIS compatible boundary files for years from 1790 through the present and for all levels of US Census geography, including states, counties, tracts, and blocks. One of the things I did find, though, when I was using this particular tool is that depending upon your query, not all data is available at all geographies or for all times or for all times.
Excuse me just for a moment, Krishna. There's a number of people that are saying that they're stuck on Jesse's screen, although we are sharing it. What they need to do is refresh if possible. That's the only solution. Continue.
All right, well, so these are the links to the source. So in response to John's comment, these presentations will be available online. They are being recorded, so you will have access to both the recording as well as to the PDF documents. For those of you who can see at this time, these are the links to the sources if you're interested. And I'm going to just break for a few seconds. I don't know if there are any questions at this time aside from not being able to see the presentation.
There are a couple questions here that one of them is actually they're mostly comments. There's no question marks. Elizabeth Leo says that IPMS is fantastic. It has great help resources, and they provide an R programming language library that helps with importing and cleaning data. Let's see, there's no more questions. Is there anything else you want to say in the last word before we move on?
No, again, for those of you who are not using our website, please come to our website. Visit the SDC website. It is not just census data. We recently put up the 2017 agricultural census. We do also have data on jobs and income. The latest from the BEA is 2018. BEA is perhaps the most comprehensive source of employment, whereas the QCEW from is just UI, unemployment insurance records, and CES does not include proprietors. BEA is a great resource if you haven't used it. So again, we do have many items to look at. Actually, one of the things I did not show you, but if you go to our ACS website, click on 2014 to 2018, we actually have a dashboard. So again, a lot of things, I'm trying to sell this because I was disappointed in the results, but let me get on to, let's go on to our next presentation. Oops, there we go.
I don't see that you have it open.
I'm sorry?
I don't see that you have your next presentation.
I'm going to pull it up right now.
While you're doing that, I'll just read a few more comments about the IPUMS. Elizabeth also says that IPUMS also has the CPS data, not just the ACS.
That is correct.
Jim Gillespie is saying that IPUMS and ANHGIS are exceptional sources for academic researchers. And Elizabeth finally says, and they do a lot of data normalization standardization that makes it much easier to cross-reference data across years and census surveys.
Thank you so much.
Good input.
Yeah. And is my screen back up?
Yep.
All right. We are actually running late. And I know we had a lot of great information, those first three presentations, a little light fare with informative, but lighter fare with the finding census data. And, you know, the big finish is the API. So I want to just generally go through some basic stuff about MDAT, and we will have an actual exercise for you online at a later date, but I do not want you guys to miss out on the API. So let's just focus it on, I'll go through this pretty quickly. So using the Census Bureau's MDAT. So we have a poll question. John?
John probably is not here right now, but like the responses are 72% haven't used the Data Ferret website, and 28% have used the Data Ferret tool.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
All right. Let us go to the next poll.
Okay, the next question is, have you tried the Census Bureau's MDAT tool? And that's not the Maryland Department of Assessments and Taxation, correct?
That is correct. No,
Krishna?
it is not. But a nice acronym. I did not catch that one.
So we got people starting to come in. Okay, there we go. Now we're starting to flood in. People are clicking. Remember, if you're having trouble clicking that, haven't heard anybody say they did today, but in the past, if you're in full screen mode, sometimes you're not able to click on the thing. All right, we got some more answers flooding in. I'd like to see more participation. All right, you've got a good presentation coming up, Mr. Krishna, because 90% said no and 10% said yes.
Wow. So I'm going to get on to the next slide. So one of the things we mentioned in the previous presentation is we're talked about IPMs and the data that they provide. Basically, it's the public use microdata sample, something that Ms. Leo and Mr. Gillespie also mentioned. They're using that product and all the things that it allows you to do. So the public use microdata sample are basically untabulated records about individual people or housing units. So for those of us who do research, we're trying to, address for those of us who have a research question, who are trying to fill out a grant application, and we cannot get the type of data we need from just going to the ACS, right? The ACS doesn't have what we want. So we want a custom table, and you can create those by using public use microdata. So when would you use microdata and when would you use pre-tabulated data? So your data needs are not met. There are limited geographies do not present a problem. So this is one important thing to remember. When you're using the ACS, even though you have limited geographies with the 1 year ACS, you still have some counties, but with the 5-year ACS, you have access to all the geographies. But with microdata, when you're using microdata, you don't. You're limited to the state, to the region, and to something called PUMAs, public use microdata areas. I'll get to that later. And the other thing when you're using microdata is you already know the variables that you need. With ACS, you don't have to. Now, how to access microdata? You can download it through the FTP site, but here's the thing. If you use the download, right, you need a statistical package to analyze the data that you've downloaded. But you also have to have a lot of memory to basically capture those large data sets. There's also DataFerret. 76% of you said that you've used DataFerret. It is a web-based program that might remain accessible to some, that might still remain accessible to some. It allowed for data analysis and extraction of customized federal, state, and local data. Then, of course, there's the API. The API, it is not fully usable at this time for getting PUMS data, but I believe I did see that they do have 2018 data profiles that you can access through the API. And that is the presentation we've been waiting for. As soon as I'm done, we'll learn more about the API. And the last one, which is the objective of this presentation, is MDAT, the Microdata Access Tool. A few things about DataFerret. as many of you know, DataFerret has been discontinued as of June 30th, 2020. It is not part of data.census.gov, the replacement for American Fact Finder. A couple of reasons that I've heard, and I'm sure those of you in the audience know of many more. One of them is that DataFerret is dependent on Java. And a lot of browsers are moving away from Java. Also, when you're using DataFerret, the most effective way to use DataFerret is to use a specific browser, i.e. something also that's being, not being used as much. Microsoft has gone away from IE to Microsoft Edge. The other thing is, if you want to use DataFerret and you want to download things, you have to type in your email address. These are the things that have been addressed by, or at least Census tells us has been addressed by MDAT. So you can access the MDAT tool at data.census.gov/MDAT. So currently, if you go to MDAT, you will have access to the ACS 1-year estimates and the ACS 5-year estimates. They also have CPS, current population survey data. The MDAT, the census is migrating everything that used to be with DataFerret, all the data sets, to MDAT, and so they expect that to happen on a rolling basis over the next year or two. So one of the things we can do with MDAT is, let's say, if a question such as how many low-income households with high school-age children have access to the internet. This is not data you can get from the ACS. There's no pre-formatted, pre-tabulated table. But you can answer that question using MDAT, whether it's through the ACS or the CPS. You can also address the question, something we've worked on is the number of persons in Maryland and its jurisdictions who are 60 years and older, making between 10,000 and 35,000 who are disabled. Well, let's look at this question for a second or two, because you're looking at 3 different variables. You're looking at income, you're looking at disability, and you're looking at age. And again, when you're trying to design the question, you also need to be very specific about what exactly you want MDAT to do. So this is when you get to MDAT, this is the main screen that you will see. In the last 2 minutes before we get to our big presentation, I do want to show you the website. Which I don't have up. So again, as I said, we will have more detail about MDAT for you in the PDF and in a later webinar. But I do want to thank you, and I do apologize that we could not get into more detail, but I do want you to hear about the API, something that's very important, and that's being, that it's not just for the census. A lot of other organizations are also using APIs, such as the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Bureau of Economic Analysis. And with that, I'm going to hand off to Al Sundara, who is going to give the presentation on the API.
Well, thank you, Krishna. You made it seem really nice that what I'm going to present is going to be really important, but I'll try to see if it's going to be interesting. I'm trying to bring up my screen here. Just give me a moment. There it is. So, like Krishna mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about APIs and how to access census data using APIs, or as it is called, application programming interface. And before we get into this presentation, or it's more like a walkthrough, I'll give a demonstration on how to use APIs to extract data.
Hey, Al, could you change your screen so that we see the full presentation, not just the edit?
Sure. Yeah, sorry, I didn't put it in the presentation. Thank you. Thank you, John. So we'll have a poll question to see how many people are familiar with APIs. And the gist of this presentation is going to be, I'll give a demonstration on how to access the Census Bureau's website and extract data using an API and be able to save the data as a table on your computer using Excel. So before we get started, here's the first poll question. Do you use API to access large data sets? Well, I have to wait for the poll to show up.
The poll is up. We got a couple people coming in right now.
All right, thank you, John.
Yep. Do you use API to access large data sets? All right, we got a couple more flowing in. We're getting ready to close it up. So if you're ready to go and want to be tabulated, click now. All right, so what you're seeing here is that 64% said no, they don't use API. 36% said yes.
Okay, that's a good mix. Like about 2/3 of the people here haven't used APIs to access datasets. What I want to mention is like it's fairly easy as long as you get the syntax of how to script that call, right? And it's logical in a way. I'll try to explain how to make that API call. And once you get familiar with that, if you start using it more, you would be more comfortable using APIs to get data, and I believe it's more easy to use than it seems. Okay. So what are APIs? APIs are basically intermediary that allows two applications to interact with each other. And you have probably used applications that use APIs in your day-to-day life, like anything you buy online uses an API to process the transaction where you're purchasing something. And earlier in my presentation, I showed a couple of dashboards that display data. These are basically built using APIs. APIs also let you update the data automatically by refreshing in the background. So you're not doing the tedious task of putting this data together and updating it manually to be current. And also for web maps, where the map is interactive and the data that's being shown on the map is being linked to the place where the data is hosted. Like for most of the stuff we do, the data we are pulling from is the Census Bureau's website. So those are some of the uses of APIs. Let's keep moving. Some of the APIs that we use frequently are, we use APIs to access the ACS data. Getting ACS data for a table for a small geography is fairly easy using the data.census.gov, but we at the state data center, if we are trying to get geography for the whole state, for smaller geographies like census tracts or block groups, in the beginning, the data.census.gov website didn't have the capability to process that many records. So the only way to go to get the data was using the ACS, the APIs. And we also use APIs to get the census estimates data. And also, like if you're looking for historical census data, I believe they have 1990, 2000, and 2010 census data available through API calls, for you to compare your data with what's going to come out fairly soon after the 2020 census is wrapped up. And How do you use APIs from the Census Bureau's website? Here is the link that will take you to the API portal or where they posted all the APIs. I'm going to go to the web to kind of show you how to access that from then on. It's going to be, you can follow along with me. If you click on that link, it will open this website right here. And maybe Krishna can post that link in the chat box. So if you guys are interested in following along, you can click on that link and kind of do what I'm doing here. So these are all the available APIs on the Census Bureau's website. That's a 1-year ACS data, and it also lists the data years that's it's available. Let me go. Basically, I want to demo using 5-year ACS data at block group geography because that's the smallest geography the ACS data is available for. And there are a couple of pages of this APIs on the website. Like, let me see here. Using this link, you would be able to access the decennial census data using APIs. And a couple of more pages here. I think they have the census estimates on the second page here, population estimates and projections. Let's go back to the previous page. So I'm going to click on this 5-year data, the ACS American Community Survey 5-year data, and it takes me to this page. It kind of has a description on how to access the ACS data using APIs and what type of data is available. Like they have detailed tables, which are familiar with the tables that start with B and C alphabets. They are the detailed tables. They have subject tables which start with S, and then they have the data profiles. These are the tables that we usually post on our websites, the DP02, 03, and 05 files. And finally, there's comparison profiles. The comparison profiles are only available at the county geographies. So you can access all of those. And then down here is the years that are the data is available for listed. It's available from 2018. The 5-year ACS data for 2019 will be available this December. So the latest data they have is 2018 data only so far. And then you can go to previous years here as well. They have data posted all the way through 2009. And I'm going to dwell a little bit on these 4 topics here: the detail tables, the subject tables, the data profiles, and comparison profiles. This is for us to access the detail tables. This is a sample API call. We will go over this particular part in a minute or two. And they have information on the details of the table variables. We will touch on that. They have a link for technical documentation, which I'm going to go over to. The technical documentation is a useful resource. It has the table shells and table list that are available for the ACS data. I downloaded from this table shells and lists the table shells for the ACS data for 2019 and the list. I'll quickly bring that up. These are the table shells for each table that's posted on the ACS website or the census data.census.gov. The table B010001, these are all the variables that are included in that particular table. And so on, like you have a list of all the tables and all the variables here. And as for the list, let me go to the list. Just give me a moment. I'm trying to bring up the list table here, which I downloaded. It's on the screen. So this is a little easier to follow. Like this, just list the name of the table name, and the title. So it's easier to browse than the detailed shell, which has all the variables listed. These are all the tables that are part of the Census Bureau's release through ACS. And let me go back here. So that's under technical documentation. And we look at examples and supported geography for these 4 topics here. And like for each specific topic for detailed tables, you need to look at the supported geography. For data profiles, the data is only available through census tracts. You can't get data profiles at the block group level. And similarly, for comparison profiles, the geography is only available till the county level. Let me go to this examples and supported geography here, just to give a quick overview. So these are the geography lists for the 5-year ACS tables, for detailed tables. Like if I click on geographies here, it lists all the geographies the data is available for. So I'm going to look through this list and say, okay, item 150, which is state, county, and block groups. I know that block group data is available for detailed tables. So I go back here, and then you can also go back to look at the variables or tables that are listed. And if you click on the group list, if you click on the groups here, it will show that basically the list of tables that I showed earlier in the Excel table. These are the table names and the table titles here. So these are all the tables that are available. For our example, I'm going to try to see if we can extract the race data at the census block group level for a particular county in Maryland. And you can also click on the selected variables here. If you click on that, it will show what information is included in the table. That's not the race table, but let me click on the race table here. If I click on the race table, these are the details that are available. You have the total population, and then it's broken down by white alone, African American, and so on, and all the race categories are here. So this is basically what I want to extract using an API call. So let's go back here. So this, like I said, is a sample on how to start the API. By default, this is the part right here is the api.census.gov. That's a website. And where you have 2018, that's the year. And I think if you go to 2017, you can just change the number to 2017 and it will let you access 2017 data. And get is basically what we are trying to get the data for. And here we are getting a name for a group. Like I kind of went over the groups here. Where is this? Here. This is the groups here, groups and data is basically the tables that are listed here. So if you go here and then by default, it's picking this group for this particular table B01001. And for this is where you define the geography. It's looking for US, the United States. What we can do is I'll click this link and see if we can modify this API to select the geography which we are interested in. Right now, we are going to be looking at geography for the block groups. Let's see. So for here, like you're basically changing and typing block group, you can actually go to the examples and look at the geography and get the syntax for how each geography is coded or what word the geography needs to be used for. For block groups, I know it's spelled as block and it's space group. So we want block groups that are in a particular county, all the block groups. If you want all the block groups, you use the style syntax that will get you all the block groups. And then we need to define what state do you want the data for. So you basically type an ampersand symbol and then the word state. That will give you the option to choose a state. And I know this FIPS code for Maryland is 24, so I'm going to type in 24. That will get me Maryland's data. And then I want this data in a particular county. So I'm going to type in county and type in the FIPS code for the county, which I'm going to get it for Frederick County. So it's 021 is a FIPS code for Frederick County. There's this option, like if you use the APIs quite frequently, you can request an ID key from the Census Bureau, and they will send you a key. There, like after the county part, you can type in your key. It's unique to each organization or individual. That way the Census Bureau knows this particular person or this organization is using this key to get the data. So they usually try to limit if there are too many requests for a particular data set or data usage. They want to limit the traffic. I don't want to put my key in, but like, let's see what happens if we hit enter. So there's a little error here. So you can troubleshoot this, I guess, like it's for equal to plug group and state 24 and key equal to t 0 to 1. Okay, I have to put and in state. It's in Maryland is what we're looking for. So I forgot to type that in. Once you fix that, it should probably work now. So by default, if you look at the raw data, it kind of looks like gibberish. Unless you get this data into Excel or a machine readable format, you're not going to use much. This is basically a JSON script that it's spitting out. So what we do from now here is I would copy this link and go to Excel. All I'm doing is copying this link. I have my Excel open somewhere here. I'll try to bring up a blank file. So that's an Excel book. So I think most of you are familiar using Excel, but there are some free converters out there that will convert JSON script to a CSV or an Excel table. But I want to show you how to use Excel on your own. So from here, go to the data tabs on Excel. And here, where it says get data from web, click on that and a dialog box will pop up and asking you to plug in the URL that we just copied. I'm going to paste this URL here and then click OK. Then it's going to make a connection with the Census Bureau's website and try to access the data. So while it's working, let me see. Okay, so it says that they are maybe 2 days old. All I have to do is refresh. So usually, like the JSON script is put here, and it says it made a connection. It lists 191 items that it can bring, but you don't see any of the data here. And this is where you need to do a little modification to show the data. And Ted, our CIO, showed me a way to do this. So I'm going to share how he kind of walked me through sharing this script that would help bring the data. So basically go to home and you need to do this editor thing, advanced editor, and plug in a little script at the end, which would let you save that as a table. I have this copied somewhere. Let me see if I can find this in places. Copy. And then I'm going to update this with this little script here. By the way, this script right here, which I pasted, I put it in one of the slides towards the end of the presentation. So if you're curious to use, you can use it. Usually after you make any changes here, it'll say no syntax errors. You have to make sure that the check mark is green. If there is something missing, like, let me see if I can do it. It'll delete a comma, so it doesn't like that. So there's an error here, kind of a thing. So that's a cue to see, make sure that your script is working. Then when it's good, you click on done, and table wasn't written. Make sure it's spelled correctly. All right, let's go back to transform. Can wait. Cancel this. Let me bring this again. There was a little space there. Okay, there's a typo here. Let's try it one more time. If not, I have to do it a little differently. It's not working. Let me close this out. Let's discard this and create this again. It should work now. Go back here, copy this URL here. So, okay. Copy this and then go back here and put the advanced editor. And I'm going to plug in this little code right here, which basically would delete and replace this. Okay.
Yeah, I think you're missing just one line.
Yeah. What's that?
You're missing one line in between. Go back to where you're editing.
Right. Oh yeah, I think I know. Yeah, I see. Yep, yeah.
Between promoted headers and the JSON, you're missing table
Right.
equal stat from rows.
Right,
That's
right.
what actually creates a table.
Right. Yeah. Just trying to find that. Okay. 1 second. Let me get this thing. I had the script posted somewhere. Actually, it's on the PowerPoint itself. Let me go to the PowerPoint. So if I copy this part of the code here, it should work. Okay. I'm messing this up. Okay, let me go here. And I want that. And then I want to replace this part with that code. But yeah, now it should work, hopefully. There, that's the table right there. Now you can give it a name here. Let's call this block group data. And then when you close it, it automatically says, do you want to display the data? Say yes. Yes. I want to keep the changes and discard them. So it's going to link and it's getting the data. Wait a minute. So that's the data for block groups in Frederick County. And these are the variable IDs, and this is all the data. So you can save this as an Excel file, and you should be able to, these are all the variables that are in the table. Let me go, so again, like for people who are not familiar with what this particular variable means, like you can go back to this table again. Right here, and then go to the examples and geographies and go to the variable lists under groups, group list, and we selected the race table here. So if you click the selected variables, so the B2001, that's the total estimate and so on. So that's how you figure out what data this is. I think I didn't choose that table. I basically used the B1001, that's the table. So the B1001 is the total estimate, 1001M, and so on. So that's the list of the variables. So again, this is just to give you a flavor of how you can access the data using APIs. You can pretty much tweak the name of the table here to get the different data for different tables. So I also posted the links for various data sources to get the APIs. That's the 1-year ACS API list. That's the 5-year ACS. And this is for decennial census from 1990 to 2010. And this is how you can access the population estimates data using APIs. And I'm going to pause for questions. I know I'm kind of rushed through this, but like again, like we will try to see based on responses from the survey we will do later on. If there's an interest, we will spend a little more time and going into details of how to use this more. So with that, I'm going to see if there are any questions that we have. All right. Okay, I think I can. So there's a question from Brian.
I'm sorry, Al. The only question that came up and the presenter is left was, will the presenter discuss why we should use APIs rather than other methods in terms of user friendliness and efficiency?
Right. I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, for using the data.census.gov, which is the primary way the data Census Bureau disseminates the data. Big data sets cannot be accessed, I guess, like due to the limitation of the interface. So if you're trying to get block group data for the whole state, the data.census.gov website isn't really practically useful. So for you to get the data, you need to use an API. And again, you might find difficulties if you're trying to get data for different geographies, like like if you're trying to combine census tracts and census block groups and even the blocks to get the data, you can use that, get that using the API interface.
Yeah, the other question comes from Sean Kimberly. Do the APIs have the ACS data prior to 2010?
No, they don't.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Data.census.gov seems to not have ACS. Okay.
Yeah, they are working on having this historical or data available, but like Krishna mentioned, they're going to have this available on a rolling basis. And prior to 1990 census data, it's not available through APIs. And I don't think that's available on the census website as well, the data.census.gov website.
So right now, there's no more questions regarding yours specifically, but I'm going to bring up the other panelists and see if there's. Oh, I can't get Louis. Louis self-muted. Okay, so this goes back to Jesse's presentation. Is it reasonable to use employment estimates reflecting COVID impact in 2020 as the base year employment for employment forecasts? And oh, by the way, Quizal liked your Asian themed folded screen in your room, Jesse.
Well, thank you. I also want to get back to something that Quizal asked about the large number of persons in the healthcare industry. That is actually the largest industry in the state. The percentage of persons that were unemployed in the industry, that ranked 6th out of all of the industries. And it also, the healthcare industry also includes a lot of personal care occupations. So with the emergency regulations put into effect, a lot of people were not able to go to work, and they were laid off. Some of these personal care assistants, massage parlors are actually in the healthcare industry. So a lot of those occupations were closed as a result of the industries, and those persons were laid off or furloughed. Now, I would not use the 2020 employment information as a base year, but I would also refer that to Krishna and Al on that. I would probably, as a base year, well, it depends upon the length of what your horizon is, but I would go back probably to around 18 based on residential development, it would seem as though the state's economy had turned the corner around 2018, and I would use some interim period, including the 2018 employment figure as a part of the development of a base estimate for labor force characteristics.
Here's a question from Andrew Gray. Again, these are the questions that were left over from the that were still being asked after the unemployment. What does the out-of-state category include in the initial claims by UE program and county slide? What does the out-of-state category include in the initial claims by UI program and county slide?
Those out-of-state would be Maryland persons who resided and worked in Maryland, but now currently live out of state. There was, I recall, a controversy about some of the applicants for unemployment compensation. There was a very large segment that were with addresses unknown, and apparently some people from out of state were applying to different states to get unemployment compensation. There was some work done to clean those tables up. That's why in our database, we exclude non-resident addresses and the unknown addresses, and just we also could include a summary for counties that sum up to the state of Maryland rather than just having a state of Maryland total.
Okay. So what sources or partnerships did state or counties use for the feeding programs? Schools, churches, community centers, others? Do you have answers on that?
There were a number of collaborations. I do have some sources for the feeding cell, I think. They include churches, they include schools, they include food banks. And this was a collaborative effort that was spearheaded by the Department of Human Services, and they have their they collaborate with Salvation Army, the Red Cross, the State Department of Education provides food in those instances. So there were a lot of sources for that.
Okay, great. Last question here. Have you been able to identify a source for continued claims data by jurisdiction?
I'm not sure I understand the question. An additional source besides the Maryland Department of Labor and the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics?
I believe that's what they're asking.
No, what we're doing, we're just going to use the Department of Labor statistics so that all of the information would be consistent within for all state agencies.
Okay. Well, that's the end of the questions. Al, did you want to have any of your panelists give final thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Do anybody want to add anything?
I thought,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I wanted to follow up with Jesse's comment about using 2018 as the base for labor projections. I think he makes a good point. One of the reasons why you wouldn't want to use 2020 is, while 2020 was a sharp but short recession, we saw a bounce back. So it's more of a dip than a trend. So therefore, using 2020 is more of an outlier, and it would not be helpful in doing any type of projections. Whether it's 2018 or 2019, that's an issue. But I think 2018, as Jesse pointed out, would be the better year to start from.
Hey, Al.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, you finish up.
No, I was going to go back to something else. I'm sure Al has something to say about is the projections, employment projections that we do, and how we go about doing that. I don't know if you want to comment on that, Al.
Well, do you want to do that, or do you want? There's some more questions have popped up, and there's also a clarification for Jesse from Sean Kimberly about what he was asking. What they were getting at was continued claims are not provided on the website that I could see, only initial claims. Continued claims are not provided on the website.
But if I'm again, I apologize if I'm misinterpreting this, but starting in June, the Bureau of Labor Statistics also added a classification called extended benefits. In the column, I think in the column that I showed, it was EB. It was the EB column, and when the initial claims ran out, and then workers would apply for extended benefits. So if that's what you're meaning by extended claims, continued claims, and yeah, the data are there.
Okay, Al, let's go back.
I'm sorry, I do have a comment. Just follow up on something that Jesse mentioned. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Department of Labor, the U.S. Department of Labor, through their employment and training program, they do provide, and I can't remember the exact website off the top of my head, but they do provide a list of initial claims and continued claims. That's through the employment and training website of the U.S. Department of Labor. So that is another source in addition to those that Jesse mentioned.
Al, do you want to respond to what Krishna talked about before?
Not really. We can have a separate discussion or to address it to an email about how we use, how we do projections using the data. But I want to get to this couple of questions that just popped up. And before we conclude the webinar, we are already almost 10 minutes past the scheduled time. So the question from Andrew Gray about seeing if will Maryland get to the 99% enumerated level. I think more likely than we will definitely get there by the end of this month. The reason why I'm saying this is because I don't believe they have reconciled the information in these counties but that have secondary homes like Worcester County where Ocean City, Maryland is. And they are still thinking like they would be getting these census forms from all these vacation homes, which they're not going to. So once they update those records as not getting census forms, we will get there. And there are a couple of counties that have a lot of secondary homes. They haven't been addressed. And the other thing why I feel we would get there is because like the census count review team is taking a closer look at the group quarters that they weren't able to identify and get data for. They are probably going to reach out to us to help them towards the last, probably sometime next week, to see if we can get them more accurate information on any of these group quarters that they couldn't get address locations for. So I feel we are right there. We are only about less than 3% away to get to 99%. So we should get there in the next week or so. And Chuck asked a question about data center tools and dashboards that use APIs right now. And I actually gave a demonstration of the dashboard that we use to track the census response rates at the county level and the municipal level. These are set up using APIs to get the data directly from the Census Bureau's website, and they are updated automatically. So we will be using APIs in the future to get data and make it presented on dashboards. And I know on a couple of GIS dashboards, not directly done by the state data center, they have been using APIs to get data to display. And There are a couple of other statements here, which I don't really want to get into, but anything outstanding, we will get back to you through email. So basically, this concludes our annual training conference. And before we go, I would like to thank Louis Kiskowski, Jesse Ash, and Krishna Akundi for their great presentations. And also John Coleman, our communications expert, for facilitating this webinar and making sure that everything ran smoothly to the best of where we could with all the difficulties we had. And finally, Ted Cosmo, our Chief Information Officer, for jumping in and kind of helping me with how to access the data. So in conclusion, the complete recording of today's webinar will be posted on the Maryland State Data Center website. Now, hopefully by next week, we will be sending a follow-up email with links to the webinar and presentations. And also we will follow up with an email to get feedback from the attendees to a survey on what they would like more information or training on in the near future. Thank you and have a good day.